I just want to make sure that I am doing this correctly. Yes, okay.
I am doing this correctly.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for coming. My name is Vivian Torres. I am an Alexander Technique teacher, and I'm also a classically trained musician. And so I just wanted to tell you all a little bit of my journey of how I discovered the Alexander Technique and how I came about it. I think it would be beneficial. Okay, so I am a violist. Maybe some of you are musicians as well. I play viola. I love what I do, and I've performed in orchestras, quartets, and I also teach privately. But ever since I was 16 years old, I was experiencing a lot of tension and a lot of pain in my body, which pretty much lasted throughout my college studies. I did music, I did performance, I did my master's and a second master's. So I really love music, and I really didn't want pain to stop me from doing what I love. And so I relied a lot on different therapies and treatments, such as chiropractics, massage, physical therapy, acupuncture, acupressure, cupping. And when you experience a lot of pain, you feel powerless and you feel very limited. And so all this physical tension and pain that I was experiencing also took a toll on my mental well-being. And so, a lot of psychological therapy, and I started cultivating or developing a lot of performance anxiety, just a lot of overall anxiety of myself and a lack of trust, and which would often go into full-blown panic attacks. And so when you don't really know how your body is going to respond because you feel like you don't have any control, it really affected me. But I was very determined to overcome this. And in the music world, you push, you strive to get, to really perfect your skill, no matter what it takes. Painkillers, beta blockers, all those things. So I got diagnosed with thoracic outlet syndrome, carpal tunnel. I had a pinched nerve in my neck, tendonitis. I would lose feeling in my arms. I had severe back pain. And I got to the point where I was recommended to consider surgery because I was losing a lot of sensation and mobility in my arms. But I went to the doctor and they told me, well, we could try to remove one of your, upper ribs to help alleviate the pressure of the nerve that is running down your arm. And they said, but, the neck area is very delicate and a lot can go wrong. So potentially we could just, snip something by accident and then you would have permanent loss of your arms. So I didn't really go that route, as you could see. And so I went online and I was just really trying to search, what is something else that I can, that I can figure out, that I can try to use. And that's how I discovered the Alexander Technique. There was one practitioner in my town in Miami, Florida. I'm in Miami, very south. And I went to him and moving me around, having me think a lot about my body. And then he said, okay, by the end of the class, he said, okay, move your arm. And at that time I was wearing a brace because my wrist had given out. And I was using all these other, treatments, and yes, they were helping me to a point, but I would always kind of go back to zero a week later. So I was always dependent on it. And so he said, move your arm. And I was very scared to do it, but I started moving, and I said, it felt different. And he didn't exactly just work on my arm. He was kind of like, getting me to think of my whole body and like listen to sensation, and having me do like these very gentle movements instead of just kind of like really just digging in there and massaging and just focusing on that particular spot. And I was like, what is this? I was like, what is this magic that I have never heard of? And so down that rabbit hole I went, and I decided to do a whole year of just, really studying this. And I wanted to put it to the test. I said, okay, I'm suffering from panic. I'm suffering from performance anxiety. I had trouble playing my viola. I teach. I couldn't even like hold my instrument for an hour to teach a student. I'm going to give myself, a year to take a break and see if this works. So I gave myself a year, and then I went to complete another master's at a University of Miami. And I said, okay. So I did the year, and it was like night and day. Honestly, I did not feel anywhere near as much tension. And I realized that I was able to still perform. And it was the most amazing thing, like knowing that I had the power to change where I thought my life was going to go. And I'm so grateful for this technique. So once I finished my degree at I said, I really want to help other people, because, in the music world, and just I think in society in general, we're not really taught how to manage and how to understand pain and how to heal ourselves. And I wanted to pursue a teaching degree. And so I went to Philadelphia and got my certification for 4 years. And now I'm a teacher. So I think it's really powerful to hear a person's story. I feel that knowing that I'm just not teaching this, but that I really had to live through it, that I had to live through my own struggles, and that there is another option out there. It is very different from other forms of modalities, and I just would like to give you a little sentence of what is the Alexander technique after giving you a little bit of my background. It is not a therapy. It is not a treatment. It is an educational tool. And this method teaches individuals how to change faulty postural habits. So how you use your body, how you sit and stand. And as a result, it enables improved mobility. It improves your general posture. It improves performance. So if you're a musician, actor, dancer, someone who's just really in the public eye, or just performing your daily activities like washing the dishes or having to bend down to grab something. The word performance is just, it's anything we do. And it also improves alertness. So the level of energy, the level of focus and attention on how we do something. And even with all this good stuff, it also helps relieve chronic stiffness, tension, and stress. So tension and chronic stiffness or injuries in your body, and stress as well in the body, as well as in the mental state. Like for me, I was experiencing a lot of panic, and I was experiencing a lot of anxiety just on my day-to-day. So what this work does is it really helps you redirect your priority of trying to focus on what you do and just doing stuff. And it helps you come back to how you're doing something, how we use ourself, also termed as the use of the self. And I just want to emphasize this is not an exercise class. This is very much an exploratory movement where we slow down to really become aware and of how we do general activities. So I would like to kind of start with this little model here. And this is a representation of how our body works. So let's say you have shoulder pain. And let's say this is your shoulder. And your muscles are very tense. And so I'm going to bring that a little bit in because there's, shortening in the ligaments and the muscles. And that's what happens when you have tension or injury. You contract, you go within. But notice that when this one part starts contracting and narrowing, look at the whole model, how it all comes in at the same time. And then when you find release, everything releases as a result. So I'll do that one more time. So say you have tension in your neck or your shoulders, or for me in my arms or lower back, or just any other type of injury or tension, that part of you will want to narrow and come in because we want to protect it. But as a result, when we do that, our entire body narrows in some shape or form. And most of the time, we're not even aware of it because we're so focused on the pain and the spot of tension. And so what the Alexander technique does is that in order to help us find more mobility, to help us find more freedom and ease in our arms, we work on connecting with the whole body, because when something releases, the whole body releases and expands. And even though, let's say this is the shoulder, and I'm freeing that, you can't really tell where the freedom is happening, where the freedom is starting from. It's all kind of happening at the same time. And so instead of trying to really focus on my shoulder because I'm experiencing pain, we focus on really sensing our entire body from the top of our head all the way through to the soles of my feet, and really, really feeling an integrated sense of whole, so that my whole body can free, and as a result, my shoulder will free. So I thought I would want to kind of start with a little bit of exploration of our joints, because there's again a very misconception as to where can we find freedom to move from. And this idea of where are our joints and what is a waist, where do we move our head from to find the most freedom. So I want you to put your fingers just right in front of your ears, right in front of the little earlobe. And I want you to imagine that there's this line cutting straight through the center of your skull. And I want you to find that space between your ears and behind your nose. And that is where the top of your spine begins. So your spine is all the way up here, all the way up here. And it continues to go all the way down through my neck, through my whole ribs, all the way to the bottom of my pelvis. And so, for example, I was experiencing as a viola player, and thank you whoever donated, really appreciate it for the Community Rights US, that as our spine, we have this beautiful connection from all the way up here, and that it supports our head all the way through our neck, and our neck is supported all the way through our torso to the very bottom of my pelvis. And so when I was experiencing a lot of tension in my arms and in my neck, I was putting way too much stress on my poor neck. Playing an instrument, holding the viola for dear life, straining all these poor muscles, and I felt that I had to hold that viola just with my neck. And I really didn't realize that my neck was just a part of my entire spine that was supporting and sustaining me all the way from here to here. And knowing that I have all this beautiful support all the way inside me to help me hold my viola was a really big change for me. And so we're going to start with just kind of exploring the very top of our spine. And I want you just to simply nod yes, and imagine that you're nodding from way up here, and so that your neck isn't kind of, moving with the nod, but it's just from right up here, almost like wheels are turning, but your spine is staying nice and long all the way to the bottom of your torso. Nodding yes. And it's a very small nod. And then just turn your head no, and really again, that you're turning from all the way up here, allowing your neck to stay undisturbed so that it can continue to feel that support of your entire spine to the very bottom of your pelvis and your torso. And that your head is just delicately floating above this strong, stable, and long support that runs through your body. And as I do that, I notice that my neck just feels much more supple, much easier to move when I think of my neck connecting with my spine. And so the muscles of my neck don't really have to do so much work for me to turn my head from side to side or to move my head up and down. And this is one of the main principles of the Alexander technique, is the relationship between the head and the spine, which is right here. And we call this the primary control of knowing the relationship between our skull, that it's delicately balancing on top of my spine so that everything underneath and all the way through to the tips of my hands and my fingers to the soles of my feet will be able to coordinate and move easier if my relationship with my head and the top of my spine stay easy and free, and my entire body will stay easy and free. And so I just want you to just kind of take a little bit of a walk, and you can either keep your hands just right here so that you keep that awareness. And with this Alexander technique, we use a lot of our tactile sense, our sense of touch, to become aware of our own movement, of how we use our body. So using our hands on ourselves as we're doing an activity is really helpful. So I'm going to keep my hands just right here so I can really remember, oh, this right up here is where my spine begins. This is where my head moves from, not from here to move, because that's a lot of strain, and that will create a lot of strain in my arms. So I'm just going to take a little bit of a walk, and as I'm walking, I'm sensing all that support from here all the way through to the bottom of my torso, and knowing that my neck doesn't really have to do that much. And can I really allow my whole spine to support my head as I walk around? And maybe as I'm walking, I'm going to kind of turn side to side to kind of look to my right, and notice that when I turn my head from way up here, my whole body kind of follows the direction of my head. And this really introduces this idea of head leads and body follows in the Alexander technique. So our primary coordination, which is that relationship from how our head is balanced on top of our spine, so that there really doesn't have to be so much happening here, that I can really feel that support all the way down from here to the bottom of my pelvis, which is all the way here. And so when I move my head, I have all that beautiful support all the way to down here. And I nod my head, and I'm still sensing that connection of my spine and not letting my neck do very much. So when I walk, I'm going to let my eyes start the movement, right? Instead of just, pushing myself into one direction, or pushing my hips and then just letting my whole body follow that direction. Can it be a little more consecutive and integrated? So let's say I want to look to my side. I'm going to let my eyes start leading that motion. And when I start looking, I notice that my head wants to turn and follow that. So I'm going to let my head turn, and I'm going to let my neck do a little less, so I feel my head is staying balanced and supported by my whole spine. And the more I engage my head, the more my whole body wants to follow that direction. So we're going to try that on the opposite side. So you started on this side, we'll go the opposite. So I'm going to start looking, letting my eyes really lead, so I can really use my eyes, and then let my head really follow that. And as it's turning from way up here, letting my neck do less, knowing that I have all this beautiful support all the way through my spine, there's a point where my body wants to follow that direction, and I'm going to just allow that to happen. So that we can use our whole body in any activity that we do. And what this Alexander technique does is that it really shines light and awareness to the most fundamental activities that we often overlook, right? Since we were babies, since we were probably 2 years old, we walked. Okay, I know how to walk, whatever, I just walk. We don't really think about it too much. Or how we stand, Since the moment I started taking my first steps and as a kid, as a baby, I know how to stand. Why do I have to look at that, right? Or how I lay down, or how I sit. These are all things that are, we don't really think about. But really, every activity we do, whether it's playing an instrument, running, sitting, being on the computer, they're all just more complex variations of these fundamental activities. And so the more that we shine light on what we do on these very general activities, that awareness will affect and improve how we play our instrument, or how I go for a jog. The more I really take the time to notice how I'm walking, the more I take the time to check how is my body stabilizing when I'm sitting, then all other things throughout my day, like I'm sitting a 9 to 5 on my computer, ow, my arms are hurting. What is causing that? It really teaches us to kind of sense our whole self. So we started with the top of our spine. This is called our atlanto-occipital joint, which is where our skull meets our spine, right? This is our highest top joint. We call it the top joint. And then underneath that, we have a joint right here where our collarbone meets our rib cage. And so many people probably don't know, I didn't know this, that our collarbone actually moves when we move our arm. So I want you to put just one hand right at the very edge of one collarbone. And I want you just to raise your arm up. And just be curious, do I sense any movement happening when I bring my arm up and when I bring my arm down? It might be pretty subtle, so just really let the contact, try not to press too hard. Be a little lighter so you can notice a little more of the subtlety. And you're right, there is movement there. So this is a joint. So we're going to try that on the opposite side. So I'm going to put my hand right in the little gap and then put it on the side of my other collarbone. And I'm going to bring my arm up. And knowing that my arm begins here instead of here. So if I really feel that my arms are starting all the way from more in a centered part of me, how does that change the quality of your movement when you raise your arm up and down? And now I want you to think that you're moving just from here. And see what that, wow, so you heard that crack? And then just bring your arm up and feeling like this, none of this is moving, you're just moving from here. What does that feel like? I hear a lot of in my shoulders when I do that. And just let that go. And then I'm gonna just put my hand one more time on my collarbone and really feel that my arm is moving from here. Like the movement is really starting from there. And that this joint doesn't really have to do that much. It's simply following where my collarbone joint is moving. So when you're at a desk, for example, and you're, maybe you're picking things up or, grabbing something, or, we use our arms all the time, okay? There's no way around it. We need our arms for pretty much everything we do, especially if you're a musician. And so I encourage you to really just give yourself a moment to, feel this movement. Oh, if I want to move my arm, can I let my collarbone joint be a part of that, and also maybe lead the direction of my fingertips. So this is coming and my arms come from here versus my arm coming from here. Notice how much I just kind of went dead a little bit here versus really this includes more of my whole body when I think of my arm coming from my collarbone joint. So when you're on your desk and you're typing and you're doing your 9 to 5 and can you give a little bit less work on your shoulders and really feel that even every fingertip, even every single little type, feel that your arms are resting here instead of feeling that you have to do so much from there, right? And so we're gonna kind of slowly build this idea of what is our arms, because our arms it's not just a one piece, it's actually 4 joints that move together to use so that we can use our arms. So we started with our collarbone, and then we're going to keep this in our awareness, but just kind of start letting our shoulder joint, which is where our shoulder blade connects to our upper arm bone, but really letting the movement still happen here so that this joint doesn't have to do so much work, right? And maybe try the other side. And again, I like keeping my hand here so I can keep reminding myself, oh, I can start the movement from here and I don't have to do so much there. Yeah. And then try that on the other side. And really just listen to how your collarbone is moving. So again, we're expanding our attention to not just the activity itself, but how that activity is impacting my body. And can I continue to listen? And not just with my ears, but can I continue to listen with all my senses so that I can allow my body to move in such a way that doesn't create more tension, but that just creates and promotes ease and freedom in my whole body. And as you're doing this, can you become aware of your feet on the ground? So that as your arm is moving up in space, just allow the weight of your legs to release further into the ground. Not by pushing or forcing, but just almost like just releasing any excess tension so that the weight of your bones, the weight of your muscles, and the volume of your legs can just connect just a little bit more with the ground underneath you. And just notice, by including more of my feet in my awareness, how does my arm feel? And for me, it feels actually a lot smoother because, again, I'm just really including more of myself in my awareness, more of a whole body, so that when I think of allowing some tension to release, my whole body will release in other ways. I love this model. Great, so we have our collarbone joint. We have the joint where our shoulder blade meets our upper arm bone. And what's next? Our elbow. So I just want you to move from your elbows, and I want you just to, let's just kind of explore. I want you to keep your hands square to your sides, or your arms to your sides, and just moving your elbows. Not trying to move anything else. And just notice, does this feel familiar to you? You know, do we type from here? Do we kind of keep our hands to our sides without there being any space there? Or just, you know, when we're standing, we're just in this position. So now as you're rotating from your elbows, can you think of allowing there to be movement all here and in your collarbones? And as soon as I start thinking of my collarbones, I can feel that there's, you know, just a little more space between my torso, my ribs, and the insides of my arms. And you can even go a little bit higher. And again, can my collarbones really move with my whole arm system? Now we're going to start including our wrists. Our wrist joint, which is where our hand meets our forearms. So our wrists are moving, our elbows are turning, our joint, which connects our upper arm bone with my shoulder blade, and where my collarbone meets my rib cage, are all working together. And then I'm really letting my arms come out from here versus from here. So just try that. Let's just, again, it's always great to explore one way so you can notice, oh, this really does feel different, and is this more beneficial or not? So just from here, not moving collarbones or, your chest or your torso, just moving from here. And when I'm moving down, I go, I can feel that, and maybe try the other way. Yeah, and how did that feel? You just kind of take a moment, like stiff, tense, heavy, and cultivating words, body words, which we're not taught in mainstream culture, the language of the body, which is flow, heavy, light, firm, balanced, free, mobile, flexible, tight. We're very much, we have great vocabulary for what we see. We have great vocabulary for what we hear. We have great vocabulary for what we taste, and but not so much with how we sense and listen to our body. Okay, so we have our wrists, and then just kind of start waking up our fingers. So letting all the joints in our fingers. And something else that's really important as, we type or text or play an instrument, knowing where our fingers start, right? So you might think that this is the end of your finger, right? And so if I play that way, by thinking that this is where my finger ends, that's going to create a lot of tension in my hand. And so I want you to just kind of clamp your fingers, kind of like you're doing an alligator mouth. Okay? And notice how your fingers go all the way, or there's like this clamp that goes all the way to the center of your palm. And so our fingers actually continue all the way to here. So when we use our fingers, again, just like our neck, knowing that my neck doesn't have to be the only thing that supports my head, but that my entire spine all the way to the bottom of my pelvis can support my head. It's the same thing with our fingers. So when I'm typing or using my instrument, that I can include more awareness of my fingers from here. So when I'm using them, I'm really thinking from there. Or when I'm doing a trill on the instrument or playing, versus just moving from here. That's much more limited. Great, so our top joint, which is where our head meets the top of our spine. Our collarbone joint, which is this is part of our arm system. And where our shoulder blade meets the top of our arm, our elbow, and our wrist. And our actual shoulder blade, I want you just to put your hand on, you can either put it to the side or just up and over, and I want you to move your arm up. And notice that movement of your shoulder blade rising up and sliding out to the side. And notice that it's not just a vertical direction. It's a diagonal, so it's a widening, and then it comes back. So I want you to put your hand there one more time and notice that it's very much a widening out to the side direction to use your arm. And then it slides back in. So let's say you're trying to grab something straight up. That really just trying to come in this direction without really knowing in my awareness that my shoulder blades actually widen out and help widen my back to bring my arms up, can really create, again, more tension in my body if I just go this direction. Ouch. So try this. And I already feel a lot of tension in my neck. I feel tension in my stomach. I feel a lot of tension up on top of my shoulders because I'm not thinking about this widening as I move up. So this time, as your arms are moving up, I want you to allow there to be some widening, so a little more space between your arms as you move up versus it just being a vertical up. So let's try that again. And can we include the awareness of our collarbones, this is where our arms are resting. And this is where our arm movement begins. So really thinking of the very tips of our fingers connecting with our collarbone joint. And as I'm bringing my arms up, my collarbones are spanning out and my shoulder blades are spanning out to their sides in both directions, so that my torso and my back are widening simultaneously as I bring my arms up. And can I allow there to still be this widening as I bring my arms down? So bringing our arms down is a little more of a challenge because I already feel that I want to kind of like come in. So can you continue having this idea of I'm allowing my arms to rest here and doing less here. So let's try that again. So I'm going to lead with my fingertips. I'm going to allow my collarbones to span out so that they can stay wide. Allow my shoulder blades to also widen behind me as I bring my arms up. And now, as I bring my arms down, I'm going to really still think of maintaining an expansive, voluminous, wide torso so that my arms can just gently float back down. Okay, great. I think I wanted to spend a little bit more time on our arms because they're such a strong stimulus. And my own experience, and from a lot of people, tendonitis, carpal tunnel, all those things, just knowing that, we have all this support, that it's not just from here, or from here, but that we can use more of our body so that our arms can be really freely suspended as I use them, right? Okay, so what's the next joint? Common misconception is that we have a joint here, which is our waist, right? But there is no joint there. We actually are not designed to move from here, right? And we do that a lot. When I want to grab something, I'm gonna, just kind of turn from there. Ouch, and look at all this rounding, and my neck is getting tense. I'm really contracting in my whole torso because I'm moving from here. So the next joint is actually further down. It's all the way here, which is where our leg meets our pelvis. And you might think this is my leg bone. Yes, this is your leg bone. This is the outer part of your leg bone, which creates the widest part of your hips. But our actual leg bone connects to our pelvis from up here. And it's actually more in front, and there's more spine and back behind. So if you want to reach for something, instead of reaching from here, right? And look how my head just kind of loses that beautiful connection all the way down. It's kind of broken. The line is broken. I'm going to move from here. So I'm going to put my fingers again right on the bikini line, like where our, that crest. Is that the right word? Crest? No, probably not. But you know what I mean. Just right there. And I want you to imagine that you're folding your torso from here. So I'm going to just bend So it's pretty way down there, and I'm going to keep my head in line with where my leg meets my hips. And then I'm going to come back up all together versus that. And then I never really use my hip joint. And the less we use something, the more stiffness and tightness we will have. And I notice I already feel tension in my lower back when I move from here. Ouch. But if I really move from here, then I'm just folding over, and I'm thinking that to the top of my head, I'm really connecting myself from all the way down here to here to grab something. And then if I want to bring myself back up, right, I'm going to press my legs down into the ground so that I have this upward flow to bring myself up, and my whole torso is riding the wave of the movement of my hip joint. So however fast this is moving is the pace and tempo or rhythm of how the rest of my body on top will go, instead of just, pushing myself up, or my head moves up and then my body comes. Can I let everything really be integrated as a one unit? Yeah. And I just want you to keep your hands right here and just kind of just move your legs forward and really feel that your legs are releasing out and away from your hip joint. And just take a little bit of a walk, but still keeping this awareness. Again, the more we use our own hands on ourselves and receive this tactile information, the more we can remember and cultivate these new habits of movement. So I'm going to keep my hands here, and I'm going to really feel that my legs are moving forward from more in front of me versus just from underneath me. So why is this helpful? Well, when we try to use our legs, right, we often do a lot of unnecessary things here, like tuck my tailbone in, raise my chest to walk. All this, a lot of unnecessary efforting here. And so if I really think of sensing that movement and release here, and leaving my whole back undisturbed, then I actually release unnecessary tension, and my whole back can work together as a one unit. And so this really leads to the Alexander's directions, or how we can remember this type of movement. He kind of came up with this phrase. So I'll say it twice. And I want you to really feel like you're embodying or just kind of sensing these words in your body as I recite them. So I wish for my neck to be free, so that my head can delicately float up and above my spine, so that my whole torso can lengthen and widen, so that my legs can release out and away from my torso and my body, so that my arms can free into width. I'll say that one more time. And notice the vocabulary. I wish my neck to be free. So it's really not an idea of doing or making something happen. It's more of an intention and allowing the body to take that direction or that thought, so that the body can undo in its own way, instead of us thinking we have to force it to happen, right? So I wish my neck to be free so that my head can delicately float up on top of my spine. So my head will release just a little bit into length. And as a result of freeing or softening my neck or doing a little less with my neck, my head finds more balance on top of my spine, which is way up here, right? Not just here, it's here. And as a result of my head finding balance on top of my spine, my whole torso then has the possibility of finding length as well as width. And when my torso has that possibility of length and width, my limbs, which are my arms and my legs, have the possibility of freeing out and away, my arms into length and my legs freeing down into the ground, so I find more stability. Great, so we're gonna finish with something called Constructive Rest. And this is a really great activity and exercise that you can do at any time, whenever you have 10 minutes, 15 minutes throughout your day. It's very powerful, and there's really great guided talks so you can listen to when you're doing constructive rest. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. So in constructive rest, we're on the ground. So I have like this carpet and I have a book. You know, the thicker the book, the better, because our head is very much in the center of our body and it's not in the back of our body. We want to maintain that connection and that support even when we are lying down. So having something firm helps really maintain that stability versus having a pillow. Your head can kind of fall back or sink in. So again, something to do on the ground because it is firm and helps really undo unnecessary tension. So we have a book and I place my head on the book. I want to make sure you guys can hear me, so that I'm going to bring my microphone and I'm going to roll to my back with the book under my head. And I'm going to have my knees bent. Why is this helpful? When I have my knees bent, it really helps my lower back open and stay wide. So it helps really release tension in the lower back or in the back in general. And you can put your feet, whatever is comfortable. If you have any knee injuries, I would recommend just having a little more space between your upper leg and lower leg, or just wherever feels comfortable. And you want about hip width distance between both knees so that your knees aren't coming in together, because that will create tension in your inner thighs. And then my arms, my elbows will be folded to the sides, and my hands will just be laying somewhere on my torso. And this, again, having my arms in this arrangement helps promote that widening in my shoulder blades and in my collarbones, which really helped with my tendonitis, carpal tunnel, and thoracic outlet syndrome. It really gives your nerves, your muscles space to release and to find their necessary length. And when they find their appropriate length, they become more elastic and more flexible. And in the constructive rest, you're going to keep your eyes open so that you can still stay engaged with what's around you and seeing what is around you as you're sensing your own body, so that we really learn and cultivate this habit of, can I still stay engaged with the world as I'm going through my day and still be able to stay engaged with myself and how I'm using myself. So just giving yourself a moment to allow the ground to support you, that you have that strong and stable support underneath you. And you have the gift of gravity. To also aid you in releasing unnecessary tension in your muscles. Can you allow your neck to really stay soft so that my head can really have its full weight on the book? And just sensing the weight of your arms, the weight of your legs, the weight of your head. And sensing and noticing the flow and rhythm of your own breath as your eyes are still very much alive and here and not glazing over. And again, this is a practice, a tool that we have to practice, just like learning an instrument. I have to do it and do it and do it. And the more I practice this of, can I still stay here and see what I'm seeing and be in the world, but also still be sensing myself internally at the same time. And just knowing that you really don't have to do anything, just notice. And that my body can do the rest. I'm just simply including more of myself in my awareness or in my attention. And that the more I include the walls, the room, the air, the sounds, the weight, texture, tension, release, the less chances I will be startled or feel anxious. So I know that we're almost out of time, so I encourage you to do this as often as possible. And I will finish with the video of Community Rights US. If you would like to send me an email, I do offer group classes and private lessons online and in person. My email is alex.technique.miami@gmail.com. Thank you all for coming and have a great Saturday.
Did you know it's illegal for local governments to pass laws that protect their communities from controversial corporate activities like oil pipelines, genetically modified crops, fracking, and clear-cut logging?
Did you know that corporations have more constitutionally protected rights than people do?
Enter the community rights movement.
Since 1999, 200 towns, cities, and counties in 9 states have passed locally enforceable laws that ban specific harmful corporate activities. and put decision-making back in the hands of local people.
We want to bring this incredibly successful community-based strategy to every community in this country.
We've assembled an amazing network of people and organizations to provide communities with the support and training that they need to run successful community rights campaigns.
Our work transcends conventional single-issue activism. We think of it as a rights-based strategy, which allows progressives and conservatives to have a much easier time coming together to protect the health, safety, and welfare of residents and the local environment. Community rights lawmaking can protect our right to clean water and safe food, our right to free and fair elections, our right to living wage jobs, and our right to a renewable energy future.
But this movement is about more than just reclaiming our local lawmaking. It is also about catalyzing a profound culture shift.
Imagine the possibilities in your community if more and more of your neighbors and coworkers could envision themselves as taking an active role in the governance of their own communities.
We are, in fact, we the people. That is where our ultimate power and authority resides.
Your contribution will greatly expand the reach of the community rights movement.
Thank you for your support and for sharing our fundraising campaign with others.